Black Magic, Crestron, and Black Magic. I'm going to sign him out.
Staff, are we ready to begin? Good evening. I'm going to call to order the public safety meeting. Today is Monday, August 8th, 2022. Land acknowledgement. The West Hollywood Public Safety Commission acknowledges that the land on which we gather and that is currently known as the City of West Hollywood is the occupied unceded seas territory of the Gabrielino, Tongva, and Gabrielino Creeks people. Next, Pledge of the Allegiance, which Vice Chair Balbone, would you mind leading it?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, with liberty and justice for all. They moved it.
Took me a moment to find our flag. I think they moved it. Roll call.
Commissioner Berger? Commissioner Oliver?
Present.
Commissioner Suchiong?
Present.
Vice Chair Balbone?
Present.
Chair Hallman?
Present.
Also, please note that Commissioner Roman and Commissioner Steele are both absent.
Can we move to our adjournment requests?
Okay. Do I say that part?
The Public Safety Commission is requested to approve the agenda. I'm sorry. Are there any adjournment requests from the commission?
Yes, I have one. Today we lost an amazing talent, Olivia Newton-John, who I remember as Sandy from Grease. And I think any young gay boy who loved musical theater loved Grease. It has been known to be one of the most successful movie musicals ever made. She also had a chart-topping hit with Let's Get Physical, and of course, I love me some Xanadu. So she is in my thoughts as well as her family this evening.
Are there any other adjournment of requests? Okay, moving on to the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion. I thought I did.
Excuse me, Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to bring to you and the rest of the commission, I know last commission meeting, Commissioner Roman had brought up the situation concerning maybe having some of the monthly reports
Yes.
by the fire department, sheriffs, and block by block conducted, right, maybe a little earlier in the agenda. I know we don't have a packed agenda this evening, but I didn't know if that is something that you and the rest of the commission are considering. You can certainly do that, and this would more than likely be the most appropriate place to do that.
Yes, and I believe that's what Vice Chair was about to do, make the motion.
But I couldn't do it.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Okay. It's now voting, but I tried to make a motion and it didn't let me.
It went through, that's why you can vote now.
Okay, but we're adjusting it.
So the motion would be to approve the agenda as amended.
Okay, we'll approve it as the agenda as amended. Got it.
So are we clear then, staff, that the motion is to move our reports forward? Thank you.
And I think we should just state out loud for anyone who did not watch the last meeting that the goal and the reason we're moving those agenda items forward is to give the public and our community safety partners the ability to speak on our monthly reports early in the agenda and move on to other business later in the agenda. So I just wanted to say that for anybody who wasn't at the last meeting.
Yeah, and if I could just also add, just so that I know, making the motion to amend the agenda to have these monthly reports performed earlier on the agenda, I think it's important, at least for us, to kind of clarify where exactly on the agenda that you would like to have the monthly reports provided. And so, as we're currently on item 5, approval of the agenda, you can certainly propose to maybe have that replaced with item 6, approval of the minutes, unless I'm going to look to our city clerk if that's something that can be done, or should we do it after item 6, approval of the minutes, and or after public comment, prior to commissioner comments?
Yeah, I think it's probably most appropriate to do it after public comment and before commissioner comments.
Got it. So if that's okay with Vice Chair Balbone, who made the motion to amend the agenda to have the monthly reports essentially replace item 8, which is currently commissioner comments. We would still have commissioner comments, but we would have commissioner comments after the monthly reports, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, now moving on to the approval of the minutes.
Do any of the commissioners have changes to the minutes? Okay, can we get a motion?
First.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and, there we go. We have a motion and a second.
The minutes have been approved. Now moving on to public comments.
Do you have anyone in chambers?
We have one speaker in chambers, Michael Carter.
Greetings and good evening, everyone. I wish you a fine evening and a fine meeting. I'm Mike Carter. I'm the neighborhood watch captain from Ogden Drive. I've been here for 37 years or so. I was just wondering if it's under the purview at all of this commission this evening to move business regarding, say, required fire safety inspections in buildings that have been affected by fires. I'm pretty sure we have the American Red Cross standing by. They were at my neighborhood watch meeting, and they're very concerned about fires in our domiciles, and there seems to be an outbreak of them. I know we have a top-notch fire department, and I'm sure that they're at the ready to help us out with this. It seems reasonable to ask for required fire safety instruction when a building has experienced fire. I don't know, I got an email from a neighbor of mine at 1133 North Ogden Drive, a couple doors down. I submitted the email for the record this evening. What's going on is we have generations of homeless people who set up in our unsecured subterranean garages. And I won't describe here what the email describes because I think it's quite graphic. If you'd like to read it, I encourage you to do so. But the women are afraid, the men are uncomfortable, and there must be something that we can do. The residents of the building have done their due diligence and they have secured their letter of agency. I'm not aware if there have as yet been any arrests, but can we please address the city manager with this problem, or can we please discuss subsidies or rebates or something so that we can get these underground parking lots secured? On another note, I turned in a flow chart that was the handiwork of Mr. Danny Rivas, and I thank him very much for it. What it is for me is a representation of a very repetitive process that I wish we could abbreviate. It's a process that many of my neighbors have gone through and described to me in excruciating detail. It is a tedious process, and it can be used as a wear-down tactic. And in the final analysis, someone who goes through this process can then be hit with a rent reduction hearing. These things are, simple plumbing issues. Oh dear. May I continue?
Yeah, no,
There's
you can
hardly
continue.
anyone here.
You can have another.
I thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you can have another 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you, sir. Plumbing, roof leaks, balconies. I know that dialogue with the deputy began again, and I know that I spoke up for its reinstatement, and I know it's time and resources, and it might be time and resources better spent interfacing with the community on a walk through the neighborhood, because that's how I made my neighborhood watch a success, was charging people down the street and the sidewalk and inviting them to a party. And I ended up talking to 20 people for 2.5 hours, and they gave me plenty of opinions and explained to me what their situation is like in West Hollywood, and it's just interfacing with the community. And I think it's maybe a great idea. Thank you very much.
Can you remind me again what year you started your watch group?
2017 or 2018 was our first. 2018 was our first national night out. Commissioner, director.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you, Mike Carter. Do we have any speakers in Zoom?
Thank you. Yes, we have 2 individuals in Zoom who wish to speak. The first speaker this evening is Michael Vojkolevich. Michael, please press *6, and you will have 3 minutes to provide public comment.
Yes, good evening. My name is Michael Vojkolevich. And in addition to this agenda item, I actually requested time for the one that just preceded. meeting minutes. And once again, I've been denied opportunity, even though under the Brown Act, the public has the right to speak on any item on the agenda. So, given the denial again, it probably answers my outstanding questions as to what this commission is actually doing, other than spinning its wheels and treading on the same light topics that have been deliberated ad nauseum. Nowhere in the past year has there been any agenda item specifically on COVID. In fact, no item for public safety on COVID for the past 2 years. One has to go back to June of 2020, when the death count in the US was just over 100,000, to find any update on COVID listed upon the agenda item for public safety. A year after June 2020, June 2021, public safety was canceled. Why? No agenda items worth considering. So despite an ongoing fentanyl crisis, which is ravaging this country, including parts of this little island, nothing by Public Safety Commission. Active shooters. We have not only an assortment of public parks, but we have educational facilities that cater to the young and those entering into college. We have a number of soft targets within this community, and yet there has never been any discussion, as far as I know, no agenda item on what the city is actually doing to prepare for an active shooter. Are parks equipped to act as first responders while the real first responders actually make it to the site? Apparently, this is not a concern for the current commission that sits tonight. As a reminder, this thing called the Olympics, summer 2028, is now less than 6 years away, and yet no discussion to prepare for what possibly could happen during those 2 weeks in July of 2028.
Thank you, Michael. Did you want to have an additional minute to speak on the approval of the minutes?
The minutes are already approved, which negates the fact that there are erroneous things that have now been allowed into public record by those sitting upon this commission. Thank you for the extra time.
Thank you, Michael. Our next speaker this evening is Jamie Francis. Jamie, please press *6, and you will have 3 minutes to provide comment.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Members of the commission, I am calling because it's in reference to National Night Out, as well as transparency when it comes to the behavior of some commissioners that are also running for city elected office. What I find disturbing is I did my due diligence and uncovered some things that I don't appreciate, and I will disclose them. Last month, I wanted to go to dialogue with the deputy. I waited, and I had to find out only through the media and online sources that the event had already happened. What I don't like is that people running for city council submitted pictures to one of the 2 local websites that are in news cycle saying, courtesy of this person, who was front and center at the event. I didn't see any members of the public attending. I saw staff, I saw deputies, and I saw volunteer deputies. One of them being Dimitri Kerman, who ironically owns a business behind Dialogue Cafe. I tried to reach out to Dialogue Cafe. The managers were not available. They didn't want to speak about it. They kept on giving the runaround, and then my phone call was not answered. I then confronted and wanted to get basic issues at National Night Out. How? They have the upper hand. They have favoritism. They have preferential treatment for deputies to be side by side with people who were part of the defund movement, who had an epiphany, who realized, you know what, let me change my tune because I'm running for office. And yet, they're the ones that have public access. They're the ones that have private access, excuse me. And the public doesn't have access at all. When I try to reach now Captain Mulder's office, he was unavailable. He was in a ride-along with Mayor Meister. When I tried to approach her, she didn't want to talk, or I just want to get opportunities to see where is the transparency. Why the public only has to find out after the fact, where special access and special accommodations and special relationships are formed between Danny Rivas, the deputies, and the commissioners. I get you have a role, but don't be two-faced about it. Where I want to engage, and I can't even attend an event that happened before because guess what? It wasn't advertised by the city, and I'm being told or have audacity, oh, it was on the sheriff's website. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't on the city website. This was an internal memo or a situation where people who were commissioners got to have a chance to hobnob with local deputies and set up photo opportunities. Why the pictures submitted to WehoTV was on behalf of Robert Oliver. Why he had access and why he was the one to submit it to the media. That's a conflict of interest. We're not here to have photo opportunities amongst commissioners when we have serious issues of homelessness, of attacks. The day that the city council talked about defunding the police, I was attacked, brutally attacked by a homeless person who ran after me on Sunset Boulevard. Those things couldn't get addressed after the fact. And I want answers and transparency.
Thank you, Jamie.
Is my time up?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
That was
you.
our last speaker in Zoom.
And Director Rivas, this is where we want to slot in our reports, correct? Our agency reports before commissioner comments?
That is correct, Chair, yes.
Okay. So then our first report would be on by block by block.
Chair, I believe the first report is by the Los Angeles County Fire Department.
Oh, my apologies. I'm sorry.
Lucky I asked. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you for having me today. My name is Battalion Chief Sarah Rathbun. I'm responsible for the jurisdiction of West Hollywood on the A platoon, and I'm here representing Assistant Chief Drew Smith, who sends his apologies that he couldn't be here this evening. We're very proud to serve the community of West Hollywood, and we're here to present the July fire activity report. I'm told you have this in front of you, correct? Mm-hmm. Excellent. Would you prefer that I go through the entire report or just address some trends?
I think, could you address trends and things that you feel we urgently need to be aware of?
Of course, of course. In the month of July 2022, there were 627 total responses in the city of West Hollywood. That adds up to approximately 21 responses a day, which actually is just under our average of 25 to 30 responses per day. That includes both emergency medical services as well as fires, as you can see from the graph. In particular, in July, we've had 15 fires. And if you turn to the rear of the page, you'll see that they're broken down by type, and they consist mostly of rubbish fires and occasional cooking fires in houses. Fortunately for us, the community of West Hollywood is quick to respond to these and notify us, in which case we were able to get there very quickly and keep them from expanding to larger incidents. The largest incident that we had was a structure fire at the location of 1140 North Clark Street on the 15th, and I actually was the incident commander on that fire, so I'm happy to speak to that in more detail if you need to. But suffice to say, LA County Sheriff's deputies acted extremely quickly on that day and took an arson suspect into custody, and they're investigating. Because we had some of the public comment regarding concern for our unsheltered persons in this community, I will point out that there were 7 total rubbish fires, and that some of those could potentially be attributed to the folks in our community that don't have housing. However, it's very difficult for us to pinpoint causes for those types of fires because they're often unwitnessed and there's no accelerant used, etc. So it's often unclear as to how they do start. If you look at the very bottom, there are 2 hazardous conditions that were reported in July. One was a carbon monoxide incident that was mitigated quickly, and the other one was a gasoline or flammable liquid spill, which we also mitigated quickly. Fortunately, our first responding units have the tools to address those, but we also have larger response units for hazardous materials that we're able to call in should they expand in LA County. Any questions?
I do have a question about the June report, which we did not have last time. So I just wanted to ask about any of those arson or?
Sure. To address the June report, which I'm sorry, I didn't see it on the agenda, or I would have brought it up. Thank you for letting me know. On the June report, we actually had less fires. We had 9 total fires, and the overall call volume was larger, to the tune of 23 a day. So there were actually more medicals in June than there were fires as compared to July. There were 5 that were rubbish fires. None of the fires that were in June were identified or are being investigated as arson. And they did not include any structure fires whatsoever. They all were in relation to vehicle, cooking, or rubbish. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And there's a second question I have from the last meeting. A member of the public stated that they know of or were the person who got trapped in an elevator when the power went out in a building. And sometimes when the fires happen, power goes out in the buildings. And the problem was the call function wasn't working because the power wasn't working. And having been in elevators myself and stuck in elevators myself, sometimes your cell phone won't work either. So I'm just trying to understand what the protocol is and if there's anything we need to do for a situation which could be catastrophic, which is there's a fire in the building, someone disables the elevators, but there's someone in there. Like, how does that work? How do you know about that? And is there anything we need to do on enabling elevators with something that you can communicate regardless of the power?
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen the permit, et cetera, that the elevator's been inspected, et cetera. It's a combination of those inspections that ensure that those things will work or will be reconstituted quickly in the absence of power. Most buildings that have elevators have backup generators that are expected to kick in that case. We inspect some buildings that have elevators at the fire prevention level in the station, and other ones are referred up to our fire prevention unit, which you've seen, I'm sure, attached to our Station 7 on San Vicente, just north. Would you like me to continue?
Yes.
Sure. When the fire goes, or when the fire occurs in a high-rise building, quite frequently the elevators are shut down, and that's for the safety of the folks that may be in the elevators. And when we get a call to access an elevator that may or may not be compromised, we go through a very step-by-step process to ensure that we get that person out safely, and that also includes notifying the elevator company. So each case is a little bit different, but to address your comment, just like buildings that are inspected for fire safety materials, like you see in here, you've got sprinklers above. Those are inspected yearly. When the elevator is inspected, they ensure that all of those things work at that time, and they also check the generators, et cetera.
Thank you. I'd like to somehow figure out if we can take a follow-up from the concern that was raised at the last meeting by one of the members of the public to see if there's a particular building we need to investigate. We can take that offline and figure out how to do that, but that was raised, and I think we do have to follow up just
If
to
there's a
make sure.
particular address we could check for you, we'd be happy to do that.
We can validate the address offline.
Great.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
I did have a question. I know we spoke earlier about fire safety and fire, and Director Rivas, a few months ago, I brought up my concern regarding all of our landlords following code with smoke detectors and carbon monoxide protectors in units. I would just love to see how we can move this forward. Maybe now that we have such a great relationship with the Red Cross, and I know they're very good at aiding people, making sure that their buildings are safe, but also our amazing fire department, how we could just, fast track this. Because as a fire survivor, it's something that I find is very important.
Of course, yeah. We find that a combination of our yearly inspections of apartments and large residences like you're speaking of, and an aggressive public education program is the right combination in general. So we're happy to work with you to expand that. That public education is critical when it comes to holding landlords accountable and making sure folks speak up when they don't have the right things in their apartments. Because once a year, though it may be the law, may not be enough, as you said, if you have turnover in apartments or if folks don't know what they should be asking for, that could be an issue.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So, staff, you were going to check into generators for those elevators?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Berger. Yeah, and as the battalion chief had mentioned, so there obviously is a program in terms of where not only fire prevention, but the station as well does perform their inspections. That isn't something, though, that city staff, either from building and safety or code enforcement, perform on a regular basis. Here in the city of West Hollywood, we do not have a proactive inspection program, but like Vice Chair Babon had mentioned, if there are instances where we have concerns that are raised regarding a specific building, then providing us with that specific address so that we can investigate that and work with our partners at the fire department to go and take a look at that. And if there are issues, then we would go through our code enforcement process in terms of addressing that.
So are there cities that do have, I think you mentioned it in the last meeting, that do have a requirement in code compliance or something with a generator?
Yeah, there wasn't anything that I could find in terms of, we don't have anything in our municipal code, and there's nothing that I was able to find in terms of any city having a specific ordinance that requires that. However, as again, the battalion chief had mentioned, when plans are submitted for buildings or when they go through tenant improvements, that does trigger certain instances where our building and safety engineers do look at the safety aspects and making sure that the building code is being adhered to right at the time of when they're submitting for either, again, those tenant improvements, rehabilitating or renovating a certain portion of the building. But if you have a building that was built, which we have many of them here in the city of West Hollywood, that were built maybe in the early 50s, 40s, et cetera, right? The building code obviously was very different then than it is now, right? As well as the fire code. So those buildings are interpreted as being legal non-conforming. The typical title that most people are familiar with is it being grandfathered in, but that is a legal non-conforming building that was approved right at that time. But what triggers them having to have the ability to put in a backup generator is, again, if they're renovating a certain percentage or they're making other improvements, then that's something that our building and safety staff take a look at.
So I want to take some action on the two things that were mentioned on this, which was the fire alarms and the generators, at possibly looking at a recommendation for a policy change for the city, where that might be really looked into as something that we require. And then also the fire alarm idea, we've been going around in circles with this for years. And I even mentioned the Red Cross. Actually, years ago, they have a free installation. They give away free lithium 10-year batteries. I want to see some action on these things. And so I don't know if we want to formalize that in a motion now, or wait until our work plan and our priorities, because I could make a motion now to agendize that on the next meeting. But if we want to earmark that, I can wait for my other commissioners if you want to put which ones that you want to prioritize for our next meetings. So, Chair, that's going to be up to you.
Yeah, Commissioner, and I feel all of the issues are very important. I agree with you 100%. I believe you also survived a fire in your building at one point. So do we want a work plan or do we want to agendize this item, Director?
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea to place that on the work plan. I do know that there was a city council directive, actually, Chair, following your mention a couple of months back, that city council did sponsor and give direction to staff to follow through with doing an educational campaign, as the battalion chief had actually mentioned. But in terms of doing any sort of proactive inspection, I just want to share with the rest of the commission that that is a very involving process that takes an extreme amount of resources in terms of having staff. And I can certainly tell you that code enforcement does not have the capability to be able to provide proactive inspections at buildings. However, they do have the ability to follow up with resident concerns when they're brought to our attention. So there's two different things. Educational campaign, absolutely, certainly is something that we could place on the educational work plan or the commission work plan. But if the idea, and I just wanted to make sure that I understood correctly, if the idea from the commission is that we have code enforcement staff going in and verifying to make sure that smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, et cetera, which are required to be functioning properly in every habitable unit, if that's the idea, then that's something that has been brought up in the past, but that is not something that the city would be capable of doing now at this time. It doesn't mean that we could look at something in the future.
The Red Cross is experts at this. They don't require it. They send a team in to, go around the neighborhood. So that's not something we would need to require for the fire alarms, at least. So do you want to put this on the work plan so we can?
I think the work plan, we should place this on the work plan. And I think I would like to see urgency from the city with a campaign so residents are aware, and maybe we can liaise with the Red Cross, because I've spoken with them as well about this, and they are more than happy to go to homes, to apartment buildings, help you map out a plan and check for smoke detectors. So yeah, I think an awareness campaign we need to put at the top of the agenda.
Yeah, and again, Chair, and the rest of the commission, that is a city council directive that is currently in place right now as a directive to the community safety department. So we will start working on that and provide updates to the commission, but certainly capable of adding it to the work plan as well. And that would be the intent, is to provide ongoing updates in terms of the progress being made in regards to that.
Okay, great, thank you.
I've got some more. To answer Michael Carter's question about the fire safety instruction, that falls directly, yes, that does fall directly under our purview. One of our duties is to evaluate and recommend mechanisms to involve the fire department in community services. So if you're talking about some sort of a training at your building with the fire engine, I've done that in my building without even being a public safety commissioner beforehand. We've had some of us go with our CERT groups. Maybe you can speak to that. I don't know if that needs to be formalized. I would love to see that be something that is a citywide thing that we invite each building to do. But I don't think it's necessary if he contacts you directly, or Megan Courier, probably. I'm guessing she's the liaison.
Correct, yeah, you would go right through Megan Courier, and we're thrilled to participate in it. We're looking for ways to get out in the community, and we would be very happy to put on a training for you folks.
And maybe we can make that really, find out what works with that, and then see if we can get that going citywide. And also your other question about the mixer, A neighborhood watch mixer, yes, we are, that's also under our purview to, let me read it here.
Commissioner Berger, are you referring to the coffee with the cops?
Didn't you ask for some sort of parties or mixers where you can get to know your, well, sorry, I can't talk with him like this way, but.
I believe a caller mentioned they weren't aware of the coffee with the cops. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm referring to Michael Carter's comments that he was suggesting there's some sort of, I'm thinking like a mixer or something like with the captains or some way that they can get to know us and the fire. And
I met him in the lobby. He's delightful. Yeah, I'd be happy to hang out with him and have coffee anytime.
Okay.
Commissioner Berger, so one of the things also that is a city council directive that the Department of Community Safety is currently working on as well is looking at reimagining neighborhood watch groups and resident associations. So as a part of that, that is something that we will be doing, is coordinating a meeting with all the block captains, not only having kind of a debriefing regarding National Night Out that just occurred, but also touching bases on the different items, and doing a mixer, as you described, is definitely something, along with many other ideas about a potential rebranding, et cetera. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I can tell you that our public safety specialist, Jessica, who is actually across from me, is definitely working on that and is going to be in touch with all the neighborhood block captains.
Okay, yeah, because I would just like us to, our purview is to establish and maintain communications with citizens. I would just like to see something a little bit more formal where we beef that up some. And then the last one he mentioned was under the underground parking. Is there some sort of funding or anything that, from the city?
Commissioner Berger, I think we should address that with our sheriffs.
Well, it's actually, Director Rivas, this is something that you might not know about, because I was a rent stabilization liaison. They did have a fund through the rent stabilization. I don't know who the person is there now, but to address protecting the underground parkings, they had a fund for certain things that are in an apartment building, even if it's not the building landlord that provides it. So maybe that's something that we can check into.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll follow up with Mike Carter and get the specific address, and then we'll take a look at what assistance could be provided potentially under the rent stabilization division. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, we can bring that up when the sheriffs give their report. And just a reminder to commissioners, when we receive our reports, we can ask questions, and then we go into public comments, and then if commissioners have any additional follow-ups, they will happen then.
I do appreciate you, Commissioner Berger, wrapping that around, because that actually takes me to my conclusion, where I would, I heard you when you spoke earlier, sir, and I want you to know that we are attending the Homeless Collaborative meetings with the city. I was on the last one on July 13th, and we found a lot of areas where we could collaborate a little bit better, and we're taking steps toward trying to address that with an empathetic eye. It's a complex problem, and the city actually has a lot more resources than a lot of the places that the county covers, and we're thrilled to be in a place where we can actually utilize some of those resources, put them to good work. So appreciate you bringing that up. Unless there are further questions, oh, go ahead.
Just wanted to see if you could give any insight into the vehicle fire on Sierra Bonita, 921 North Sierra Bonita. It did 100,000 in damage, so I'm assuming some building damage. It's kind of a scary thought of a car burning underneath.
Correct.
Multifamily.
Yes, and although I was not the incident commander for this one, so I would have to get more details on that from our comprehensive report, which I can absolutely do for you to follow up. I can tell you just from looking at it that The reason for the damage was the burn into the carport, obviously, which, as you said, is the structure. And that was quick work by those firefighters to keep that from extending into that building. And that's actually a very difficult fire that we train on pretty frequently because carports are often not right at the front of the building. They're way further down. So it involves us extending larger hoses to get our smaller hoses close enough and fast enough to keep that from spreading into the building. And unlike maybe a dumpster that's on fire, a car has, as we all know, fuel, which causes it to be much more difficult to control when it's up against a building. A lot of these fires, I was very proud when I saw these statistics of my firefighters because a lot of these firefighters should have been structure fires if they had not acted so quickly. So I'll get the more detailed report for you so that you can review that and make sure that we follow up.
I'm glad to hear no one was injured as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for me?
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Now I believe we're at block by block security.
Chair, is there a period of public comment for the fire report?
I'm sorry, say again?
Have we already done public comment for the fire report?
We don't have anyone in Zoom for public comment. The person who signed up has left the meeting. Jessica, do you have any speaker slips for this item?
Nobody in chambers to speak on this item.
Okay, I'll be more aware to make sure that we don't miss public comments after each report. Thank you, Chair Oliver.
Good evening, everybody. David Aguilar. I'm a regional vice president with Block by Block. I oversee 15 locations within my region, and West Hollywood is one of them. I'm no stranger to West Hollywood. I've been here for many, many years. I was the former program manager here back in 2013, and I relocated in April of 2019. Shay cannot be with you guys here today. He's actually celebrating the birth of his child today, so I wasn't expecting to pinch hit today, but here I am. So that's why he's not here. I did reach out to him just to see if there was any trends worth mentioning based on the report that you all received. Most importantly, probably mentioning would be the scooter violations. So you guys now have a full month worth of scooter violations that were reported for the month of June. It looks like the team addressed 145 scooter violations. So that's going to consist of scooters that were left on the public sidewalk that they picked up and moved out of the public right-of-way. You guys will also see that we've got a full month of stats for the West Hollywood Park and the Arc Center, which services began there July 1st. And so lifeguard escorts are pretty important mentioning there. We had about 51 that we provided, along with a social service referral, some business referrals, looks like some graffiti removal. We addressed some park violations, and we assisted some pedestrians out there. Were there any questions on any of the statistics or any of the trends?
I have a question, and it ties to some of the new foot patrols.
Okay.
You know, we have the current reports that break it down by the major corridors.
Okay.
How will the reports change, or is that something we should be meeting to go through with you and with Shay to talk about how we'd like to see some of that? I know that how that's all going to go down in terms of the plan and where people will be deployed is going to be discussed, but I'm just curious, is there a partnership we should do in advance to figure out how we want the reports to look?
I think we're going to work closely with Danny and the team just to see what you guys would like to see. I mean, we can pretty much produce whatever reports you guys would like.
Okay.
Just the way he has it broken down here by East End and West End, I'm sure that once we start expanding into some of the residential neighborhoods, just depending on what you guys would like to see, we can compile a report based on that.
Great, thank you.
Good to see you, David.
Good to see you.
There were some things mentioned at the last meeting by some of our residents that I thought were a really good idea. For this pilot that we're doing with the scooters, I don't think there's any stats on this like they mentioned. how many, I'm wondering if staff or somebody can do this. It would be simple. You go out and you observe 100 people going by on scooters, and you see the number of those that are riding on the sidewalk out of 100. That's one simple one. Another one would be how many of the scooters are picked up by ABM. Another one would be how many of the scooters are picked up or moved out of the way by block by block. That would be very interesting because I don't know if those statistics are anywhere to be found. As the residents mentioned, they think that the statistics kind of were favoring the scooter companies, and they didn't feel like these were this kind of statistics. I think it would be very advantageous for us when we decide on to support or not this pilot. Can those things be done, Director Rivas and David? Can you guys do those?
Yeah, I'll jump in, Commissioner Berger. So in terms of the statistics regarding what actions being taken and kind of the contact with scooters that our block-by-block security ambassadors are performing, that's something that David and Shay and the team, right, is working on. I think what David mentioned is that this is the first time that been able to kind of report on a full month's worth because this is something new. That they just started, but moving forward, we can definitely include that. In terms of the statistics as it relates to ABM, which is the hired contractor that the city has in place to kind of manage, right, the relocation of the security, of the scooters in the public right-of-way. So those statistics are something that can be compiled. I would have to coordinate and work with our parking services division and long-range planning division, as those two divisions are the divisions at the city that are overseeing the pilot program. So I can speak with them about putting some monthly statistics in place and be able to kind of add that separately. That wouldn't be included as a part of the block-by-block monthly report. What would be included in the block-by-block security ambassador report would be the contacts that the security ambassadors have, but we can compile, right, that other information and maybe put together a separate report. But that is something that we would need a little bit of time to get in place, but we could provide that.
So I think I'm going to make a motion as a recommendation to City Council just to formalize this. So I want to make a motion that City Council directs whoever it is, I don't know, block by block or whoever it is, to tabulate, collect this data.
You know, Commissioner Berger, not to interrupt you, but I think we're at questions now. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to make a motion.
We haven't heard from the public yet, so it's better to take public comment
Yeah,
before
so we need to
deliberation.
wait.
I'll withdraw.
Thank you. Any other questions for block by block?
Real quick, did that launch the sidewalk detection? It was going to launch a week after since last meeting.
A sidewalk, could you be more specific, Commissioner Berger?
Commissioner Steele asked about sidewalk detection, and you said there was something that was going to launch in a week since the last meeting. It was something with technology. I don't know what it was.
Yeah. If that was something that was reflected in the staff report that long-range planning and parking services staff prepared and that I did communicate to the rest of the commission on, I can certainly follow up. My understanding, the community safety and block by block, we do not oversee that specific program, but we can work with those other divisions, Commissioner Berger, and follow up to get the exact response that you're looking for in regards to that.
And she also asked about a survey, the results of a survey that was on July 8th, I think it was. Did those come out yet?
That's something that we'll follow up with as well.
Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other additional questions before we move to public comment? Staff, do we have any public comment for block by block?
I have one speaker in Zoom who would like to speak on this item.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Adam Darvish, please press *6, and you will have 3 minutes to provide public comment.
Right, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. I just wanted to thank Chair and Vice Chair and Commissioners for sort of the new beginning. I know there are a lot of new commissioners and a lot of movements going on in this commission, and I'm excited to see the work that will be done going into the future. I also thank the previous commissioners that served the city. Also, before I forget, I want to thank the fire department that presented. They're my neighbors on Cynthia, and great support to the community, just being next door neighbor to them. I've learned a lot about them, and they're so quiet and considerate of late nights of pulling out of the station, not creating too much noise. So really thank you, and residents, thank you, and your service. That is important for us. I wanted to comment on block to block to see if the residents would get anything as far as information of how they would collaborate with our police department and sort of an outline of what they do. I think a lot of residents are not familiar with the duty and assigned to them, or what do they do, what can they handle, what they cannot handle. I know it may be somewhere online on the city's website, but I think it would be nice to roll it out to residents so that we understand it could be a support to them too, and to see how they collaborate with our police force. That is not a separate service or sort of the the rumor that got out there that we're replacing the police department is not true. But again, that would be important to many of us to know what they do, if that could be possible. The other item about the scooters that you just brought up that I should be talking about, our residents or visitors, the cars get towed away and they're charged a tow at the storage. I don't see why the scooters cannot be towed away by the city, or have a mechanism of giving them a ticket for not managing their customers and just having them left on sidewalks. I know that is new and we're trying to collaborate with them. Maybe it's not a good time to punish them. To me, it's not punishment. They're blocking access for older adults, residents with disabilities, so it could be a problem. And I think it's time for now that the city will just collect them off sidewalk and issue a penalty so that they take it seriously. So that is my comment, but overall I appreciate scooters over cars. As you all know, the experience that I went through with a car that went 100 miles per hour on Larrabee into my place. So glad our city is looking at different ways of transportation than scooters and other electric bikes could improve quality of life for all of us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam. Chair, that was our only speaker.
Great. So I believe we are finished with block by block. Thank you.
Thank you.
So can I make the motion now about the scooters?
So I think there was a motion pending from the last meeting that there's follow-up that we might need to get from Danny. I see it in the tracker, and maybe it would be time to let him give an update, and then after, comments from staff maybe.
Okay.
Would that work?
Yeah.
Because I know that there's something from the last meeting noted, so.
Perfect.
So are we going to do that now, staff? Is that what you're saying? That Director Rivas will...
No.
Comments by staff at the end. I think during staff comments that Danny would provide an update on the tracker for the
So
commission's
regarding
request.
the motion,
Yes.
can the motion be made at this time?
I think it would be more appropriate when Danny provides the update if at that time Commissioner Berger feels that his concerns or why he was making the motion isn't addressed by Danny in his report.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Then we can move on to our sheriff's reports. Good evening, Lieutenant Lapkin and Sergeant Yost.
Good evening, Chair Hallman. Good evening, Vice Chair and Commissioners and City staff. My name is Fanny Lapkin. I'm Lieutenant the Sheriff's Station. I'm here to present July's report. Do you want me to give you the stats as we want? I know that Director Rivas and I were working on a way to present the report in a different manner, but we're not going to be ready until September for that. So do you want me to continue with the stats as we were doing it before?
Yeah, I think it's important that we continue with the stats. Thank you.
Okay. So for July of 2022, crime was up 37% with 242 incidents compared to July of 2021. This one we went up 38% with 173 incidents, which is a lot. The numbers reduced dramatically compared to June and May of last year. Actually not even last year, just June and May of this year. June was 355 and May was 281, so our numbers went down to 242. The overall percentage was 103% increase. Again, the Sheriff's Department does year to date, so it's not month by month. 75% of our Part 1 crimes were vehicle burglaries that were in the West District, which contained, grand theft, vehicle burglaries, petty theft, and other burglaries. That number increased for the month of July. In order to combat that, we've increased our foot beats, and we're actually working with the plan with block by block and security ambassadors to conduct their foot beats based on the stats and based on the crimes that we see. So we're formulating a plan with them to try and work together to be the visual eyes and deterrence of hopefully preventing crimes when people are trying to do that. One of the active, we have a series of active criminal burglaries, which was the lock boxes. We have a male suspect who, we have him for 36 different burglaries. So what he would do is break the lock boxes of different businesses, take the key, and then enter the business. So we are working together with collaborative with our surrounding agencies, whether it be Beverly Hills, whether it be LAPD, and we've actually identified who it is. So it's an ongoing investigation. So hopefully, once we detain him and arrest him, again, working collaboratively with our other agencies, hopefully those lockbox burglaries will be reduced. The total arrest for the pickpocketing has dramatically decreased. That's in thanks to our EPT team that were doing foot beats. The grand theft pickpockets were 23 compared to 92 last month. So I think the arrest that our entertainment policing team did in the beginning of the month, which was they identified one of the suspects that was on a bolo, and they stopped him. He threw a phone in the trash can. They detained him, and he had 17 cell phones. Since that arrest, there's been a dramatic decrease in the pickpocketing. So we're hoping that is, we don't have the increase that we did have in the month of June. We had 15 robberies. 1 was armed, 5 were strong arm, and 8 were what we called SDs, which was the shoplifting where there's a struggle with somebody at the stores. So that in itself was reduced, not by much, but it was reduced. We had 16 aggravated assaults. 5 of those assaults, there was 5 arrests, and only 2 of those incidents were of the unhoused or transient population. We continue to conduct our saturation patrols, our plainclothes operations, and other types of operations. Our COPS team and entertainment policing finally concluded their undercover training, so we're going to be able to do our own undercover operations without the help of other resources. We are focusing our large number of our foot beats on the West on the west side because of the large number of vehicle bergs. Vehicle bergs have been high in Sunset area, Melrose area, and Robertson area. So that is where we're going to focus our attention on. And that's all I have for now, if you have any questions for me.
Any commissioner questions?
Commissioner.
Yeah. Commissioner Roman brought up something last meeting about the pickpockets, and he said that they were pickpocketing, moving them through to Gardenia, and then shipping them out to China, which reminded me of the smash and grabs that were coming in here from the Bay Area. They were hitting here, and then they'd hit Vegas, and then they'd take it back up there and ship it out overseas, putting it in furniture or shipments or something like that. And what you guys were doing was working on the rental cars, because they were getting rental car through the rental car agencies. Are you aware of what Commissioner Roman was talking about? Is that looking like it's a syndicated sort of organized crime group? And what are you guys doing about it?
So we did hear that it was a specific organized group that was coming in and then committing the pickpocketing. So one of the main things that we have done is try to do the undercover. We have to have, prior to our team being trained on undercover, we had to have other resources. Our Major Crimes Bureau had to come in and do that for us, because if our department is, if they don't train us on a specific tactics, we cannot use it. So now that our EPT and COPS team are trained, we're going to start, and that just concluded last week or the week before that. So we'll start doing that. But we've also increased our footbeats. So because of the footbeats and the great work that our crime analyst did to put out what we call a BOLO to identify that one individual that we arrested for, and then he had 17 cell phones. So since that arrest, we've decreased the number of pickpocketing from 96 to 23. So that in itself is a huge win for us. But we just have to continue to we're going to do the undercover operations, and then we're going to continue to increase our footbeats.
And Director Rivas, am I correct? Do we have a special meeting that's going to focus on pickpocketing cell phones?
Chair, we've actually been trying to coordinate that, and we did send an email out to the entire commission. We did receive 6 responses. 2 of the commissioners had mentioned that they would more than likely unable to participate in that meeting, and we need to follow up with the other commissioner as well in terms of where we're at. That is part of some of the updates that I did want to make mention, but yeah, we do have a tentative scheduled special meeting regarding that specific topic, August 24th, so it would be a Wednesday of this month at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. But if we don't have a quorum or enough commissioners, then we would either have to reschedule that, or I was going to bring up an alternative option in terms of just having staff facilitate a meeting here in the council chambers, invite all of the business community, business owners, managers, et cetera, that want to participate, and then extending that invitation, of course, to all the public safety commissioners, and allowing folks to participate in that fashion as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have about the captain was. I requested before, just going through the numbers for the. Of the assaults mentioned in the last meeting, of the 20 assaults, 7 of them were by transients. And I asked this kind of information before because I remember that our businesses are saying these guys are coming up and grabbing a steak off the plates. They're coming up and swarming the tour bus and things like this, and they're causing a lot of havoc. So I just kind of wondered if you guys have some more statistics on that, because that seems pretty high of those assaults. Did you guys follow up on that?
Yes, of the assaults for this month, there was only 2. 2 of the assaults were of the unhoused transient population for this month.
Out of how many assaults was it total?
Aggravated assaults were 16.
Okay, and did
We
you
had
guys?
5 arrests and 2 were transient. Excuse me, sorry to interrupt.
Okay, no, that's good. Did you get the 6 more bikes from the Cedars Fund that you guys were going to get to?
We're still working on trying to purchase those bikes.
Okay. And the last thing is they asked for the number of gun arrests over the last 5 years, and Captain Mulder was going to work on getting some data on that.
We're still working on, our crime analyst is the one that has to pull that data. So it's, unfortunately, he is one man and it's on the list of things for him to do. So we are still working on trying to get the data of the guns arrest the last 5 years.
And do you guys have was requested the national average on Part 1 crimes?
The
And
national
also-
average is through crime mapping, so we would have to look directly through crime mapping.
And they also asked about trying to put it in context with neighboring cities like those crimes, and he was going to check into that?
That is, again, our crime analyst that's going to be doing that. He's working on that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Sung-Ji-Young.
I have a question/suggestion about misinformation. We received a statement about an incarcerated person who escaped from the West Hollywood station, and the statement read that with the assistance of the Area Bureau, K-9, and surrounding agencies, Major Crimes Bureau with Special Enforcement Bureau, the suspect was apprehended. My understanding is that the suspect who escaped went to a store a block away from the station and called an Uber to Woodland Hills. He then turned himself in, although the statement clearly gives the impression that the Sheriff's Department was responsible for the arrest. I would also be remiss not to point out the quite problematic and racially biased, harmful image of a black man's hands in handcuffs that was shared widely from the WeHo Sheriff Station celebrating the arrest. And I'd like to suggest that the vast PR wing of the department retract the use of this image and similar images that celebrate, obviously, the disproportionate arrest and criminalization of Black people in West Hollywood and also in LA County.
So to the website, I would have to see what picture was used. So I'll have to follow up and see which picture is used, and if that is, we'll have it removed from whatever. I don't know if it's the department, if it's ours. I don't know which picture you're referring to, so we can follow up on that.
It was on the press statement.
It was on the
press statement, on
Okay,
the
so it's
website, on
from the
Facebook, and on
county.
Twitter.
Okay, so it's probably our SIB, so I will follow up with that. And then as far as the apprehension, it was our Special Enforcement Bureau who, in collaboration with our K-9, our Major Crimes Bureau, that located where the individual was through various resources, and they're the ones that actually apprehended the escapee. He did not turn himself in.
Commissioner Sung-Ji-Young, did you have any additional questions?
Yeah, I remember there was a question from the commission last meeting around confirmation that there are no members of deputy gangs who were in the WeHo substation. And I'm wondering if there's any follow-up or latest updates on that.
As Captain Mulder spoke last time, there is no deputy gangs in West Hollywood.
Okay.
Thank you. Vice Chair Balbon.
Oh, my time is up. I did have a question about the events on Friday, and it was strange foreshadowing because in our ride along with deputies during National Night Out, one of my fellow commissioners pointed out the exposure that you have at the station, and I had not thought of that. You've got the transportation department on one side, and you've got the design center on the other side. What was the situation, and are there plans to figure out how to make that area both more secure for the transport of people who've committed crimes, but also more secure for your staff?
So speaking of the incident that occurred, so what happens is somebody gets arrested, we take them to court, or they have to go downtown to a jail. So our transportation unit comes in one of the big buses, and they pick up the bodies from our station. So once we give custody of the person to our transportation division, it's their body. So they were walking him to the bus, and that's how And yes, because of the fence that's low, he was able to jump over the fence. So yes, that's what occurred. It was it's deputy at the station. Unfortunately, it was our transportation division, but it's all of us. It doesn't matter what division it is. Unfortunately, there was an escapee, but luckily for us, with the resources that major crimes, our SWAT team, they were able to apprehend him. So as far as the security check, that's something that we can try and find out, but unfortunately, the Sheriff's Department doesn't have a lot of money, and that would require retrofitting, the fence. So it would something that we can look into and see what the cost would be to increase that fence on the side of Metro and the one in the front. We can look into see what the cost would be.
I think based on that event and just safety precautions, I don't know that it has to be something elaborate, but something that makes it a safer environment for everyone involved.
I agree.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for our Sheriff's Department?
I want to make almost a comment, because on my last ride along, I asked the deputy, how long does it take to do a catalytic converter theft? And he said it's under 40 seconds they can get in there. And the second one is the smash and grabs. That's under, 10 seconds? They smash it, they throw it to somebody that's riding by on a scooter, then they don't have possession and they're gone. Can you speak to that and to the public about what they can do and what you guys can do to prevent these very coordinated, fast crimes?
Like you've mentioned, they are very quick, but the many things that we can do. Be aware of your surroundings. If you have your purse or your bag, whatever it is, keep it in front of you. There's a lot of times when we swing it, I'm guilty of it too, you swing your purse behind you, and that's an opportunity for them to grab it. Again, one thing, don't fight, because it's property. Your person, your safety is most important. But be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of who's coming, who's around you, and where you keep your belongings, because that's huge. If you keep it in front of you, it's going to be harder for them to take. Two, one of the things that we do, if you see something, say something. So one of the things that we see is people leaving things in their vehicles where it's not in their trunk. So you're right, 10, 40 seconds to smash a window and grab it, they're gone before the call is even typed. So one of the things that we say, just be vigilant with your neighbors, with your friends. Don't leave anything in the backseat of your vehicles, because these are crimes of opportunity. It's not, a lot of the times, yes, when the gangs when we were getting the gangs from up north, those were calculated plans, but a lot of them now are calculated based on what they see in the backseat of your vehicles. So put stuff in the trunks. I hate to say, lock your vehicles, put stuff in the trunks of your car, because you can't leave anything visible in the back seats or the front seat of your cars.
Thank you.
Commissioner Songion, you good? I have a question. The reason I asked Mike Carter when he formed the Ogden Owls, because I remember one thing that came up at the first meeting I went to support a sister watch group was the transient activity in the residential parking structures. It was a problem then, and it still continues to be a huge problem. And the way some of those buildings are thrust and the way you walk into the parking, subterranean parking, it's easier for them to nest and hide. So how can we assist with this problem? Because it is a huge problem on Ogden, I know.
One, if you see somebody setting up camp, they're sleeping, call the station. We'll send a deputy out there. And the beauty and the benefit of being in West Hollywood, we have a huge, robust social services, division that they have resources for the unhoused. We can get them into homes, we can get them housing, we can help them with food. There's there's so many benefits and so many services out here for them. We just have to try and reach them, and hopefully they agree. But when you see them under subterranean garages or anywhere, just call the station. Say we have somebody there. You can call us directly. The cops team, that's what they do. That's what we deal. We go with Corey Plank's team. We deal with block by block. That helps us out too. When we see the unhoused, we go try and talk to them. We try to give them services. But you shouldn't be approaching them yourself as a resident. Call us, and then we'll go and talk to them, and we'll move them around. If they cannot stay there, there is no camping, there is no sleeping in our streets here in West Hollywood because of the amazing services that social services has here.
Thank you. And maybe, Director Rivas, is it possible to have block by block do more frequent sweeps on Ogden, especially at night when they're patrolling? Maybe that would also assist with the problem.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. Yeah, we can definitely put that on some proactive patrol schedule for them to visit that particular street more often.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Lieutenant Lapkin and Sergeant Yost? Do we have public comments?
We have one public comment here in chambers. Annie Jump Vicente, please approach the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, yes, I had a public comment listed, but as you may have seen, I had to haul about 30 pedestrian signs that cars constantly hit. But now, since we're on the topic of sheriffs, I do want to say that the term transient is extremely dehumanizing. So when you say the term transient, you take away unhoused folks' humanity. So how about we don't use that term anymore and we call them what they are, our unhoused neighbors. Because they live on the streets next to us, because we are the ones who can't afford the rent and can afford the housing. But yet we demonize those that actually need services, that need food, that need housing and water. I walked 2 miles with those signs. 95% of the way here, I became dehydrated. I stopped. I look hot. And so someone offered me some water. Wow, that's nice. I'm carrying signs. I look well-groomed, and someone offered me water. Does anyone offer unhoused people water on the street? Oh, no, they don't. Social workers? How many of them actually house unhoused people? How many sheriffs actually help unhoused people? Wait, I'm sorry, you have a massive budget to hire people with forced coercion, with forced arrestments, and aggravated assaulting over there because they want to put people in handcuffs and jail people to keep the incarceration system going. Okay? Let me break something down. Adam Smith, the father of economics in this country, said, even the most violent people, I'm paraphrasing here, even the most violent people deserve the accommodations. Even a prince, even a European prince who doesn't have much, still, even though equal to the same as the industrious and frugal peasant, still should be accommodated more than any African king, the leader of thousands of naked savages. Wow, I'm so glad that our economic system has racism built into it in the foundation of its philosophy, and those two over there perpetuate that. So I'm really sick and tired of seeing sheriffs around here that do absolutely nothing, that drive reckless on the street, that avoid when people need help on the street. When I wave you down because someone almost attacked me yesterday with their car, vehicular assault, and you, sheriffs, passed me and didn't do anything? Why are we funding you? Quit your job. If we pay you this much, pick up the shit off the street. Do some public service for a change.
Staff, do we have any public comments? Additional ones on the phone?
Yes, one of the individuals who signed up to speak for 9D actually wanted to speak on this item. So Adam, please press *6. Go ahead, you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I typed in the wrong number, but I did want to talk about this item and congratulate our new Lieutenant Lapkin and thank her and Captain Mulder and the team for the service that they provide to the city, the help that they supported to me. I did have a question that I brought up to Captain Mulder. It was Lieutenant Mulder about 6 months ago about those mobile police stations that Beverly Hills has. I believe that's what they're called. They're just placed at on certain streets with a lot of activities with a camera, and they have the police lights on them, and I guess they have speakers and you can communicate with them, but there's no police inside of those. It's just like a robotic sort of technology. And I know that it was told they cost $100,000, but I'm hoping that we'll have that in our city in sort of locations on commercial streets that have high activities as we see crime increasing. I wanted to ask Lieutenant Lapkins if we have any training for your officers in the case of active shooters or a car chase that ends up in our residential streets that are, you know, we have people walking with the dogs and residents that are exposed. I fear that could happen sometime soon. I know there's a car chase that from LA County that ended up in West Hollywood last year through Santa Monica that ended up, I think, on Larrabee, and I had LA Sheriff's Station knocking on my door because I have a Ring camera, and they were asking me if I had any clips. So again, I'm hoping for some technology that I know our Sheriff's Station cannot assemble, but maybe you all could request through City Hall. And also, I would like to know what kind of training is happening for active shooters to protect the residents, and also what this commission could do, maybe have it on an agenda for the public to know what is planned can be practiced as a mock sort of situation so that we can all feel comfortable, because everything is changing around us and we need to be prepared. So thank you so much again for the service that you provide.
Thank you. Steph, do we have any other callers waiting?
One more. Jamie Francis, please press *6 and you will have 3 minutes to provide comment.
Thank you very much. I'd like to comment about the situation with the escapee the other day. It's quite frightening that things can happen. Luckily, as we don't know, this person was not armed or weapons confiscated, but you don't understand the actions with the Uber driver as well as the general public that could have come in proximity to this person. And what happens with people who have criminal intent that come into West Hollywood with the assumption that people have money, people are well off. About 70% of the population, less actually now because of condoization happening in this community, are renters. And yet we live in this community and we are always on edge. What I don't appreciate is a commissioner who blurted out wrongful statistics about that the person turned themselves in. It is an insult to intelligence that police are trying to do their job, and yet even then they have to be undermined with reports wherever this came from or this commissioner obtained that is actually incorrect. And yet no one calls out that commissioner. But yet you can call out someone else without having your facts straight. That is unacceptable. This is what I talk about unethical behavior. When we're trying to deal with crime increase, but the sheriff's deputy said by 31% this month alone. When you look at online resources, crime up almost 100% from 5 years ago. This is troubling statistics that have to be addressed. Yet they get undermined because of a commissioner who wants to blurt out things that are incorrect. And yet, why aren't you held accountable? Why aren't you called out by your colleagues and by the general public when you say things like that? It causes damage, psychological damage to the general public who live here, who struggle to survive here, who pay our rent, who want to do things and live as just citizens. And we get overshadowed by a narrative that continues. This is unacceptable. If there's a PR stunt here, then mention it. If you say, well, we didn't like this image, okay, correct it. But do not undermine by saying that this person who escaped turned themselves in like an upstanding citizen. We are upstanding citizens and we get overshadowed because we do everything right, we live by the laws, we don't commit crime, we don't cause trouble, and yet when we want to confront or at least address this to commissioners, you didn't want to do it. Like National Night Out, oh, right along. You're privileged where you get to go from from site to site, and I didn't even have that privilege. And yet you do right along the dialogue with a cop or dialogue cafe, coffee with a cop. I don't have that privilege. It's a word of mouth. What Todd Holman did a couple of weeks ago said, I want more time to speak. I want to say this about the security ambassadors. You know, this is what happens when everybody has the upper hand, and yet the residents, we don't. And we have to answer for your actions. It's unacceptable. And you should be
Thank you, Jamie.
And I'm
Thank you,
sick of it.
Jamie.
Thank you.
Staff, do we have any additional callers waiting?
No, there are no other callers in Zoom. Thank you.
And before we move on, commissioners, anything additional for sheriffs?
I just have one quick one. Jamie, Francis, thank you for calling in and giving us that information. How can we prevent that from happening again, where he felt like there might be other people as well that didn't get access to you guys, one. And secondly, for those who did not get access, can you make yourselves available to Jamie Francis and others like him, and reach out, meet them somewhere so they can have some transparency and dialogue with you as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jamie can call me at the station and we can have a conversation. As far as the dialogue with the deputy, we can do a better job in putting it on our different platforms of social media. We can do a better job at that. We put it on our social media, on the different platforms that we have, but we can probably put it sooner. We can, I don't know, maybe we could do flyers, we can put them at the station. I don't know, we can figure out some way that Jamie and people, some others like Jamie can actually have access to us.
And maybe if there's a liaison at the sheriff's department that can work with the neighborhood watch groups. I know our WeHo East group has a very extensive mailing list that we can do blasts out to residents just so more people are aware.
That's a good idea. We can actually get whoever the lead person of all the neighborhood watchers, and we can send those flyers out because we're trying to do them quarterly, so we can tell you when we're having the next one, and we try to do it with sufficient time so that everybody. But that's a good idea, giving it to the block by blocks.
And the city usually has a mailing list as well, that they might be able to send out too.
Yeah, I can work with Jessica and try to figure out some way that we can, not just our platforms, but the other platforms. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sunshine.
Yeah, I would just like to clarify that the information that I brought up was concerns brought up by other commissioners and email exchanges with Captain Mulder. And to clarify, as was mentioned before, a dialogue with a cop at Dialogue Cafe is publicly available, so really anyone from the community can attend those events.
Any additional commissioner comments before we move on? And Director Rivas, now am I correct? We are moving to our commissioner comments.
Yes, that is correct, Chair.
Okay, great, thank you. I did want to start, I know, first off, I want to thank staff for their amazing help for National Night Out. Also holding the position as WeHo East captain, Jessica did an amazing job. So, you know, I just want to recognize you for that. I know our event was successful. I heard great things about other events as well. I know this was our most active year since COVID, as many groups didn't participate last year. Also, regarding a comment that a caller made earlier about active shooters, as many of you on the commission know, Commissioner Oliver and I have been working with staff to amend, maybe see what changes can be made to our emergency preparedness plan. And I know Commissioner Oliver has been working on that, so not to put you on the spot, but I would love if you could just make some comments where we're at with active shooters.
So kind of on that note, it's a 900-page document that we've been going through pretty carefully to update. It's pretty robust. There is a plan in place, and there are trainings that take place based on that emergency management plan. But we're making sure that it's updated so it reflects the community, the targets in the community, specific to West Hollywood that may not exist to the same degree in other cities. But I do think, I would like to see those trainings that we used to have pretty regularly take place again in West Hollywood, the active shooter trainings, and those to be available to the public. But that's kind of separate from the emergency plan. That's a written document that's publicly available and pretty thorough. You learn a lot about how our government will respond to each type of emergency should, God forbid, they occur.
And also, one thing I suggested that maybe the city can adapt our own emergency texting plan that residents can sign up for. So in the event there is an active shooter situation, residents will be notified immediately so they know where not to go, what to avoid. But again, this is all still in flux. We are working on this. Any other commissioner comments? Vice Chair Balbon?
A couple of things. On July 27th, the city hosted a monkeypox town hall right here in Chambers. It was incredibly insightful, and we will be bringing vaccinations to the city. There is a lot of concern in the community, and I just would encourage anyone who's listening who hasn't had the opportunity to look at the information the city's posted on the topic, because it is something that our community is experiencing, and there's very thoughtful information available. On the active shooter training, I do know that the city used to do training. I've attended it. It's very good training, but I haven't seen that training available as frequently as it probably needs to be available, and it might be something. I loved your recommendation about dialogue with the deputies and making sure that our neighborhood watches were available. That's another topic where whenever we're doing some type of training, including active shooter training, we should make sure that the neighborhood watches are available. And that's it. Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to our captains, Mike and Chair Hallman, being two of them who worked really hard with members of the community to make National Night Out a pretty incredible event this year. It really is the time that we get to come together with first responders, get to know the people who keep our community safe. And, for I think the third year now, I've had the honor and the pleasure of riding with sheriff's deputies, getting to know them and the work they do as they go from event to event. And I would welcome members of the commission. It's kind of been a tradition, I think, since the founding of the city, that since the Public Safety Commission has existed, but also since the founding of the city, for council members and the mayor to accompany sheriff's deputies as they attend the different events in the city. And I think that's kind of a way for this community to come together with first responders and come together with sheriff's deputies. As I can kind of feel at some of these meetings that relationship, unfortunately, has become fractured and tense with the individual deputies who come to work every day in this city to keep us safe, and members of the public who I think are rightfully upset about national and historical and even departmental downtown issues. But I think that repairing the relationship between the officers who come to this city and the 37,000 people in this city should really be a priority if we're gonna focus on community safety and be one community again. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments at this time?
I do. Yeah, I just want to give a little bit of an update on some of the things that I've been doing. One of the things, in order to establish and maintain communications with the citizens, which is in our duties listed in our jurisdiction, our purview, is doing some sandbox sort of experiments with some different groups. And one of the groups that I thought of for actually years ago is why aren't we sort of leveraging the resources of former public safety commissioners? They know the system, they've been heavily involved, and a lot of them are still involved. So I reached out to a group of them. I told them I'm doing this on my own, and if they would like to meet, and I just remembered some of them. I tried to get to as many as that I knew. And so they met. It was a really good turnout for the number that I put out there. And what they want to do is reach out to every single former public safety commissioner. They liked the idea, and invite them, and then decide their mission, decide how they're going to meet, and things like that. So I plan to continue to keep a listen and a keen interest in listening to people's concerns. I've also met with some neighborhood watch captains for the same thing of what they need. And also the Red Cross, I also do Red Cross. I've been on some of the main big disasters. And so I know how that is, working with them, where you go weeks on a disaster, and they've got some really good ideas. And the ways that we can possibly partner. And if the city doesn't need to partner or can't with the bureaucracy, whatever, then the Red Cross can still work with the residents out here. Also, I wanted to list really quickly some things that are coming up on the calendar. I talked with some people today who were worried about, like, how do they do CERT training? It's going to be maybe 6 months. Well, there is some CERT trainings all across. I have a list of them. The LAFD battalion, they've got some CERT trainings August 15th, August 22nd. The August 15th is light search and rescue. August 22nd is the terrorism and CERT. If you guys, in Battalion 2 on the FRS, that's the walkie-talkie training. That's going to be, well, that one's tonight actually at 7:30. There's a Zello radio on also tonight. On West Adams, there's another FRS training. So if those who are really interested in getting involved, there are a lot of things that you can do. But if you want some of these schedules on your calendar as well, contact our liaison, and I'll send them through our liaison how to that you guys can get involved in those kinds of things. And that's all I have.
I have a question, Commissioner Berger. What is your objective in trying to assemble former public safety commissioners together? Because they have served their time, their elected time, or their appointed time. We do have an active commission at this time that represents the city. And to me, I could be wrong, but it almost seems like a shadow public safety commission, where what if former city council members decided to band together and to meet and then march into chambers and basically give their opinions? So I don't know what your goal is with this, and I would love for you to explain it to us.
Okay, I think that outreach to any groups, any of the citizens, whether they're former public safety commissioners or not, are valid. And they have a valid voice, and they particularly have a sense of public safety. They've been commissioners like us, and some for years. And they also are very concerned with public safety. So anytime that I can get the concerns and let them give us feedback. We want feedback from every citizen as much as possible. And I think their voice would carry weight. It would for me, as a group of former public safety commissioners, if they gave us feedback and recommendations, or however they want to do it. I think my intention is to give a platform with as many people as possible, because we are doing the people's business. They are at the top of the organizational chart, and we want to hear them, and however we can hear them, and encourage and improve input and feedback, and that's in our duties. So if I can do that, I have a sort of a skill set with that, because that's what I do with my work with organizations, to try to find out what kind of things they're having with blocks, where their bottlenecks are. For example, I know the neighborhood watch groups seem to be not being able to retain and not being able to add value to people to retain the groups. So I want to try to do little sandbox experiments on a small level, and then bring that feedback to you all. So that we can maybe formalize some things that we can prove with some metrics that do help those points of interest that help our groups to succeed.
I understand what you're saying. However, every resident, every former commissioner has the opportunity to come and speak before the Public Safety Commission as well as City Council during the meetings, or call in on Zoom. That's open to them as a West Hollywood resident. So again, I don't understand why you feel the need to form
It's up to
this
them.
organization.
It's on them. I completely said it's on you guys what you want to do. Do you want to continue with this? I know the Bicycle Coalition, when they come, that's what made me think about it. It makes a difference when a group weighs in together. And so it's up to them. They all know they can come. They were on the commission. They know they can come individually. It's up to them. They like the idea. They're going to run with it. I'm not doing it. I'm not running it. They're running it. And so...
But it was your idea, correct?
Yeah, it was my idea.
Okay, so then you're somewhat involved, and you're currently
I believe it's a good, I believe they're a
dais.
good, I believe that they have a voice, and I believe it would be really good to hear from them as a group. I want to hear from them as a group.
Commissioner Oliver?
I agree. I respect and want to hear from former commissioners. The only thing I would say is that, as Chair Hallman mentioned, any member of the public has the ability to write in, to come and speak, to come on Zoom. There is no formal mechanism here, and it does become a meeting of its own. If you want to meet with any member of the public, of course, you or any commissioner or I are free to do that. But I don't know if kind of recognizing an informal meeting of any group of citizens in an official way in this meeting is necessarily appropriate. We should welcome everybody from the public to come from commissioner, former commissioner or not, but I don't know if this is the best use of the meeting time to discuss a group of former, and maybe the city clerk can clarify as well in terms of what our bylaws and city says about this.
So to use Tori's example, or Commissioner Berger's example of the Bicycle Coalition, we don't have a bicycle commission. We have a transportation commission. So I think to Chair Holman and Commissioner Oliver's points, it is creating a quasi-commission of former appointed officials. And if they want to come and be more involved, they have a lot of means to do that. So we can talk offline about it more, but hearing about it now, I have some questions.
I have concerns, and I believe Vice Chair Balbone also has some questions.
So, sorry. A couple of times at this meeting, the question of access has come up, and I want to make sure that I also state that for National Night Out, it has been a tradition that the City Council and the Public Safety Commissioners, right along with sheriffs, not for any other reason than it's tough to get around to the events, number one, and number two, it gives us the opportunity to interact with the people who serve our community. So if that's something that we want to change because it's creating friction with the public, that's fine, but that's one access issue. Now we're talking about another potential access issue where we're got a group of people meeting to talk about public safety with a background that are not part of the current commission. That makes me concerned based on what we heard here tonight. Just because we have a lot of people voicing concerns about the actions of this committee, we are under a microscope. And if we want to invite people in to speak, I think we should. I love to hear from them. I think several of them, I enjoy talking to them when I see them. They're my neighbors, many of them still. But I think we're going to have to figure out a way to make it either a legitimate thing or that they just come here as the public.
I asked them, I says, it's up to you guys. Do you want this to be under the umbrella or city supported or not? And they want to ask all of the rest of their, to reach out to everybody. And when they get everybody and explain what they want to do, they can band or disband, whatever they want to do. It's up to them.
Yeah, but you seem to be missing the point that you opened this Pandora's box. So you now have some responsibility here.
What do you want me to do?
Is there a motion on the floor to formalize this? Is there any motion on the floor?
No.
No.
So
no.
Is it
Did I violate any rule, bylaw?
Staff?
Without knowing more about it, I think to Vice Chair Balbone's point, there's a perception problem, and the optics of it do not look good, especially when, I'll use an example, the prior study session for nighttime safety that we scheduled in Plummer Park, there were concerns that people didn't understand what we'd be talking about that night, and so we had to reschedule that meeting. And I think when it comes to community safety and the conversations that we've been having for the last year, we have to be very transparent in our deliberations and discussions about that. So I guess for me, former appointed officials should be very aware of the Brown Act and should be very aware of all the ways in which they can participate in public meetings with the city. So I guess I have questions as to why they would get together outside of a public meeting to talk about city business.
It's the same with any groups. I've helped support a lot of other groups you guys don't know about. That it's a group.
The reason I asked if there's a motion on the floor is perhaps if you want to formalize this, if you want to make a motion and see if there's support to formalize this, then we can move on with the meeting.
There's no need. It's an informal. It's up to them. The city has no control over them. It's up to them. I want feedback from them, and I'm proud that I reached out. I think it's a good idea. They can do what they want. We can't control them.
I think
So the one thing that I'd like guidance on, and people can get together and you can get together with whoever you like outside of the sessions, but bringing their feedback through you is the concern
They don't
that I
need to
have.
bring it through me. They will just come on their own. I tried to take as much of a hands-off as I could with it. I told them, this is on my behalf, you guys take it, and they liked the idea, it's up to them. They're running it. I'm not leading it. I'm staying away from
that
it.
would be the only concern I would have is if any of us met with a group of citizens outside of this meeting.
Okay.
So that's the thing that I think if we just want to talk through, and we don't have to do it tonight, but just to support how it gets done, I think would need to be important.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should move on, but we need to continue this discussion at a later date. Next, are we at our work plan?
We are, Chair. We are, Chair, yes. And good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Public Safety Commission. I'm Danny Rivas, Director of Community Safety for the City of West Hollywood. I did want to just bring up our work plan. I know our work plan seems like it was established, I believe, in the beginning of the fiscal year, right, which typically begins on July 1st for us. And so what you're seeing is basically a reiteration of what was established then. I know there's been some discussion with the commission in terms of whether we want to kind of have a separate discussion that just focuses on that with nothing else on the agenda, or if it's something that we all want to kind of tackle this evening. But I know, given the fact that we have two commissioners that aren't with us, maybe it would be best if it's the will of the commission to kind of, schedule that for next month, or again, if there's another specific date that the commission wishes to kind of have a more robust discussion about the work plan and establish that. However, I would recommend that we establish it as quickly as possible, as we're already in August, and the next time that we'll meet will be in September. So I'll open it up, Chair, to you and the rest of the commission for any input and feedback regarding that.
Since we are two commissioners down this evening, as chair, my recommendation is we kind of hold on this until we're a full body. Hopefully next month, all members will be present, and then we can address this. Any other commissioner comments?
I want to make a suggestion, Danny, when we do bring this up. If you could bring that work plan up on the screen so the audience, the Zoom, and the people here can see what we're moving through, and that we get that to them so that we can make suggestions on that work plan.
Absolutely, and great idea. Will do.
Okay, so we're good with our work plan. Moving on the agenda.
I had one item on the work plan.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Yes, go ahead, Vice Chair.
I'd just like to make sure that we tick and tie some of the items on the work plan that have been adjusted or modified, such as the subcommittee that with the Women's Advisory Board is now going to be a city study session so that it can be more inclusive. That's one. And then the second one is, I know I spoke at the last city council meeting, and there's work underway for training for any of the community safety individuals, fire, block by block, and our sheriffs. I would like to figure out as soon as possible, and I don't know that we need to wait on this, how we join forces with the Transgender Advisory Board and the LGBTQ Commission when they become the commission on training that is representative of West Hollywood for all of those agencies. I don't know that we need to wait for that to be in the work plan, but those are some things that I think if we can update between when we get the timing set would be important, because I bring up the second one, which is the training, because one of the reasons we had issues with the subcommittee is the subcommittee did not exist because boards and commissions, I guess, can't mix. Sorry. Okay, I'm learning.
I can clarify.
Okay.
Yeah, two separate bodies. So in this instance, it was the Public Safety Commission and the Women's Advisory Board cannot create a subcommittee that meets together. So Danny and I will have a talk about that and a few other things and talk about it with the city attorney and find out the best way to join forces with the Transgender Advisory Board and the LGBTQ+ Commission on some trainings.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else on our work plan before we move on? All right, so moving on to new business. International.
I'm sorry, Chair. I actually wanted to go over just a couple of the updates on the request tracking, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's a
Of
part
course,
of that item
Director
as well.
Rivas.
And so we did update the spreadsheet that you all are familiar with, that we keep track, right, of requests that were made. And so one of the first items that's reflected on here for July 11th, which was our last Public Safety Commission meeting, was a request in terms of an update on the nighttime safety study session. And so I am happy to report that study session has been scheduled. It is scheduled to occur on August 22nd of this year. That is a Monday, and it'll be held at 6 p.m. Here in the council chambers where we are all at. And so we will have a number of folks that obviously had been participating in a part of that very important discussion here, along with the rest of the city council. So we do invite members of the public as well to participate and or listen into to that very important meeting. So that is certainly something that I just wanted to make sure that you and the rest of the commission are aware of. The next item that we have on here is a special commission meeting regarding pickpocketing. I know that was made mention by Commissioner Roman, and we did have consensus with the rest of the commission. We did send an email, as I mentioned earlier, to all of the commissioners with a tentative date of August 24th. So that's actually 2 days after the nightlife safety training session. And so we did hear back from most of the commissioners, some of which had mentioned that they unfortunately wouldn't be able to attend for other commitments. But I did want to get input and feedback from the commission this evening on kind of where we stood on having that meeting, that Wednesday, August 24th at 6 p.m. Again, it will be held here in the council chambers. We do have this room reserved for that date, so it is important for us to have input and feedback, or at least a response or communication from all of the commissioners on whether they're going to be in attendance or not. And if that's not something that is doable that date, then the alternative, as I mentioned earlier too, is to have a business meeting that we can certainly reach out to all of the business owners and business managers, invite their security staff as well, which I believe was the intent of getting their input, their feedback, hearing from them, also having our partners at the West Hollywood Sheriff Station obviously participate in that, even including our block-by-block security ambassadors, and getting them a little more involved too about being aware of the situation and this issue. So those are the kind of two alternatives of staff kind of scheduling a meeting with the business community if the August 24th date isn't something that is feasible. And the only reason why I'm impressing this upon all the commission is, I did even have some follow-up from some of the commissioners asking, when are we going to schedule this? Are we going to schedule this? This is a very hot topic, and so we want to make sure that we're placing it on the calendar. So wondering if I can get input and feedback and direction regarding that.
Well, I think we're not a full body this evening, but commissioners that are sitting here, have you responded to the email so we can move this forward?
I can speak up. I had a conflict potentially, but the state of California has decided not to release the RFP winners for Medi-Cal. So I will not be in Sacramento. That will not be happening until the 25th, so I can join.
Okay, I'll be present. Commissioner.
I won't be present. I prefer this business meeting that you're talking about, and invite the owners of the businesses and make sure that these employees have the blessings of their owners if it's up to them. Anyway, the owners, it's a private business, and so I think that that's a very important part of that.
Commissioner Oliver.
That's my availability.
Yes.
I could be there.
Okay. And Commissioner Sanchillo?
I have a conflict that night.
Okay. Director Rivas, can we move forward? We only need 5 to have a quorum, correct?
Correct.
So if we have 5 on the dais, can we move forward with the meeting?
We can, yes, absolutely.
I think we should do our best to proceed and move forward. If we wait to try to get everyone together for a special meeting, it'll be 2 months.
Absolutely. And again, if that's the will of the majority of the commission, we can certainly move forward with that. We will also extend that meeting. We'll do some outreach to the business community as well. Although it'll be a little bit of a different conversation because, of course, we'll have public participation. And this will be the only item, of course, that we'll be focused on. But we'll try to make the best of it and getting the word out as quickly as possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then, Chair, I do have one final update on the request tracking is basically the memo to City Council that the Public Safety Commission did make a motion for. And so as reflected in the notes section regarding the scooters and the dockless mobility program, so there was an internal meeting and essentially the departments that have been involved are planning to bring an item. It is scheduled to go to before the City Council for an update on September 19th. So that date has been pushed because originally it was scheduled to go on August 15th. So that gives obviously a couple more weeks in advance for staff to begin circulating a draft memo, which is the intent that we'll send and capture all of the items and concerns that were reflected as it relates to accountability, as it relates to ADA accessibility, as well as kind of setting a penalty structure, right, with these companies and all of the other concerns that were listed. And so we'll compile that, we'll draft that. I will circulate that to each individual commissioner for your input and feedback. I will provide a specific time frame of when I would like to receive that back, so that way I at least can have enough time to prepare kind of a final draft. And then the idea is sending that to the City Council, when that item is scheduled on September 19th. Also asking the City Clerk's office to attach that as written correspondence to that specific item, so it'll be reflected on there, and then of course forwarding on over to the entire commission with a copy of that final memo when that occurs. So that's kind of the planned approach of what we plan to do with the memo. And so I just wanted to make sure that I was able to provide that update to you and the rest of the commission regarding that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Vice Chair Balbon, did you have additional comments?
Just two things. I support moving forward with the pickpocketing. It was Commissioner Roman who suggested that. And, as we know, I don't believe his council member is running. So this is an important item for him, and he's very much behind it. So I'd like to make sure that we move forward with that in mind. I know that when we talked about this item the last time, Commissioner Berger, you were not present. So I think it'll be important that if there's anything, I know you mentioned reporting tonight, and I don't think we'd included that, Danny. So is that something that you were going to capture, or do we need to motion on the reporting piece to get that into the report? How is that going to play out?
You certainly could. You could this evening add it in there. It seemed like there was consensus in terms of that. So we can certainly include that in the memo to the City Council, as this item, again, is going to be going before them on September 19th. So adding that kind of, statistical reporting information, which is something that I know is already going to be discussed as a part of the item, because what they're going to be considering is really the future, right, of this pilot program and looking at it potentially becoming permanent. And so I think that's an important element. And so we can certainly add that because I did hear that from.
So you're talking about the data collection of those three items, particularly that I mentioned, which was how many people are riding on the sidewalks. Even if we have to data mine that ourselves, how many block by block are moving those items? How many of them are being moved by ABM? I'm suggesting that our city does that data mining ourselves, because those were really very good suggestions from the public, I thought, that'll help us determine on the pilot.
Yeah, we can certainly add, the ABM and block by block in terms of how many scooters that they're relocating, I think is certainly something that is being captured now most recently with block by block. and has been captured with ABM, so we can certainly do that. And then include what Commissioner Berger is mentioning. I don't know whether or not there is the capability of having the city, data mining as he's mentioning, because the companies are in possession of their own software platforms, et cetera. And so, but that is certainly something we can add to the memo, and that could be up for discussion for the city
It's
council.
just an observation. I can stand there for an hour. And the other thing that you mentioned was a suggestion that we vote for an individual from our commission to represent at the city council meeting with bullet points. And I'm just wondering if this commission wants to go ahead with something like that.
And that was an alternative recommendation, as opposed to preparing the memo, is having a commissioner, and I mean, that can certainly be something if it's the will of the commission to have somebody there as well.
Apologies not to interrupt you, Director Rivas, but I think before we make that decision, we need to be a full body.
There's time between now and the next meeting, so.
It will be kind of a tight turnaround, though, in terms of just, having our commission meeting in September, and then knowing that a city council meeting will more than likely be the following Monday, right? So, but yeah, you can certainly make that motion then and have somebody present. If you're waiting until next meeting, right, which occurs the second Monday, and then September 19th will be that following Monday. But you can certainly make that motion then with the full body, hopefully, and then all it would take would be a representative that's chosen to be there and really kind of speaking to the memo that would have already been prepared by then, and doing that. So, yeah.
Does that answer your
Yes,
question,
it
Vice
does.
Chair?
So we could do both. We could do the formal memo and then elect someone to come and speak to the fact that we supported the memo. Does that work? I think that's great.
Yeah, that works
Absolutely.
for me.
And I just have two other updates regarding the dockless mobility program. So I know Commissioner Berger did ask the question in terms of some of the comments from the other commissioners regarding the sidewalk technology. And so I did get an update. It is in place, and it has been launched. There are only 2 of the 3 dockless mobility companies that currently possess that technology that are currently in their pilot program phase here in West Hollywood. That is Bird and Lime. And so those are the 2 companies right now that are in place that have that. It is only in limited areas of the city. And so they're capturing data. Again, this is something new that they just launched last month. So following the commission meeting. So that's certainly information. And I think what Commissioner Berger was mentioning about that technology, hopefully being capable to provide data on who's riding on the sidewalks versus who's out in the public right-of-way, as opposed to physically having somebody stand and kind of watching and doing that. I know that's another option for doing the data mining, but it'd make it a lot easier, of course, right, if they're having that technology already in place and they're able to provide that info. And so that is something that's underway. Again, 2 out of the 3 companies. And then the other was the question regarding the surveys. And so there were 2 different surveys that were completed. One of the 2 has been completed thus far. So you have a community survey that was open to all the community members, and then you have another currently in place right now regarding just the business community, and that was just launched last Friday. But the one for the community was released in May, and that concluded, my understanding is in late June, and currently our consultant that we have working this survey is compiling all the data, all the analytics, and my understanding is they plan on having a report to the city by the end of this week. That's what's tentatively scheduled, so hopefully by the next commission meeting, we'll be able to provide some more information, and if not, my understanding is between the community survey and the business community survey that's currently open right now, that just opened last Friday, all of that information, the analytics, et cetera, is going to be compiled and is going to be a part of the update that's going to the city council on September 19th. So that is kind of where we're at in terms of the survey, so I hope that fulfills and kind of answers the questions that the commission had asked as it relates to the survey as well as the sidewalk technology.
Great, thank you. Can we move on to new business, item 10A? Item 10A, International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. The recommendation to provide a memo to City Council to adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. I believe, Commissioner Oliver, this was your motion.
Thank you, Chair. So, as many of you know, I'm proudly Jewish, and me being here today is the result of a lot of survival. And much of my family, my extended family, the extended families of my ancestors were not fortunate to survive. So for me, this is personal, but this is also very relevant to the work that we do in this commission, because we're seeing an alarming trend right now in anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic attacks. According to the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, there were 40, or there have been, I should say, 40 anti-Semitic attacks last month alone. And we're not immune to that here in West Hollywood. As you know, progressive and as understanding as we are, we're seeing, in the last few months, we've seen leaflets dropped with horrific anti-Semitic messages. We saw a neo-Nazi or a white supremacist van come through this city. But also anti-Semitism manifests itself in many ways. So it's in really insidious and obvious ways. Conspiracy theories, ancient tropes like blood libel, and literal calls to annihilate the Jewish people or Israelis. But it's also in less obvious forms. It's in stereotypes. It's in everyday conversation, and questions of loyalty. So why is this an issue for us here, and how big of an issue is this? So Jews make up 0.2% of the world's population. There are more people who live between San Diego and Santa Barbara in California than there are Jewish people in the entire world. And just over 2% of the world's population, just over 2% of the US population, about 7.5 million Americans are Jewish. 7% of Jewish Americans live here in LA County. But even though Jews only make up 2% of our country's population, Jews account for 58% of religiously motivated hate crimes. So there are many in this community who are worried, and we need to make sure that we are preparing our city's leaders and our first responders with the information they need to be ready and spot signs of anti-Semitism, and to really educate our community. So in order to address this issue, we need to clarify, what is anti-Semitism? The International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance has created a non-legally binding definition that helps clarify what anti-Semitism is. The International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, the IHRA, is an intergovernmental body, like the World Trade Organization, the EU, other intergovernmental organizations, and the United States is a member country. So the definition put forth by the IHRA is kind of the gold standard. It's been adopted by most signatory countries. We use it federally, and the Biden administration has adopted it. The State Department has adopted it. And when that many countries, I believe a total of 865 entities at all levels of government have adopted this definition. I think it is something that we ought to do here in West Hollywood. Other cities, I have European capitals, London, Paris, Berlin, Madrid, that have adopted the same definition, 37 countries, and 320 non-federal government entities have adopted this. And so, the definition is, I believe, 38 words, and it is: anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews, rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed towards Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. So I move that we as a commission recommend to our city council the adoption of this non-legally binding definition of anti-Semitism as a city.
Staff, do we need to vote on this?
We need a second.
We actually have one public comment for this item.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we'll take that first, and then we can do a motion. Adam Darvish, if you would please press *6, you will have 3 minutes to provide comment.
Yes, I am back, and I wanted to thank Commissioner Oliver for this item. I just felt obligated to share my experience. I'm not Jewish by background. I was born into a Jewish family, but just as a young person, I've spoken about it. Coming into New York, running away from a revolution, and many people that ran away from the country that I came from were Jewish, and seeing them struggling and seeing myself struggling just because of national origin, where we came from at that young age, it taught me a lot to, be a better person, be a stronger person, support everyone, and especially those, groups, the backgrounds that have struggled, their ancestors, as Commissioner Oliver has mentioned. So I support this item, and I think it's important to educate all of us, including myself, about what is inappropriate to say, because sometimes without education, you may think that is not an anti-Semitism or racism or stereotyping someone, Jewish or other groups. And the more we can educate the public, the better. And I learned so much from unconscious bias trainings that I went through in the city and at our company, and continue to learn. So thank you so much, Commissioner Oliver, for this item.
Thank you, Chair. That was our only speaker.
Only speaker.
And Chair, I did want to just also mention that our neighbor city, Beverly Hills, adopted this definition in 2020.
Okay. So we need to vote, correct, staff?
Yes, there should be a motion for this item.
I want to say something. I'm a little bit confused. I mean, my history is also Jewish, but I'm confused about what are we going to do with this? I mean, say we adopt this. I mean, it's not in our purview to do anything like this. Aren't we just trying to protect everybody? Why to do this? I don't understand.
To answer your question, this is yes. We are here to advocate for the entire community, and we kind of have to take that one step at a time. And this is one of those needs that has arisen in our community. Is in addition to other crises like rise in anti-Asian American Pacific Islander hate, and we should address that as well. But right now, this item is specifically about the rise in anti-Semitism and that we need a definition if we are to address anti-Semitism in this city. We have to be able to define it, and right now we don't have a definition of what that looks like.
So, if somebody's anti-Semitic, are they doing something to hurt somebody? I mean, is there something if they're calling somebody a name that they're going to physically hurt them? Or, I mean, how can we use this?
So the recommendation that I'm proposing is just to recommend to council that the city adopt this as the working definition. It's a non-legally binding working definition, and it's intended to inform the different agencies in our city of what anti-Semitism is. And this is kind of the gold standard definition as adopted by the member countries of the international government, or sorry, intergovernmental organization.
Okay, I mean, I'm for protecting everybody, so I'll agree.
Are we ready to vote?
Was the motion button pushed in a second?
The motion, it says mover Chair Hallman. Okay, there we go.
No.
Sorry, Granicus is a little slow. Do you want to just do a voice vote, Jessica? Yeah, we're just going to do a voice vote because oh, there we go. Now it came up. Sorry, it's having a case in the Mondays.
Okay, great. So we can move forward. Director Rivas, did you have any other additional items?
I do, Chair, and I'll try to keep them somewhat brief and kind of leaving the last item in terms of an update regarding bylaws and kind of some discussion surrounding that. But I know we don't have the full commission, so if we want to postpone that until the next meeting, then we can do that at that time. I did want to just provide the commission with a brief update regarding the block-by-block security ambassador contract that was approved last council meeting, just to answer any questions that any of the commission may have regarding that. So the approval was to expand the program to create a dedicated residential foot patrol program. Included in that was adding additional supplies, equipment, training, as well as taking into account any sort of additional office space that would ultimately be needed with the expansion. So there was an approval made, but as a part of that motion, the City Council did ask staff to return within 45 days. So we're actually looking to come back on September 19th. The same council date that we'd have the update on the dockless mobility program. And with that would be an update in terms of kind of where block-by-block security ambassadors are at in terms of their hiring, how many folks have been hired at that point, where they're at in terms of the training, as well as an update in terms of the possession of Narcan and the training and kind of the deployment of that as well. And so all of that is planned to return back to City Council as a part of that update. There's two comments that the commissioners made this evening as well that I also wanted to make mention is planned to be scheduled on that same item as a part of the update, and that's concerning data reporting, et cetera. So there were performance metrics, et cetera, that were brought up by the City Council, even some members of the public that attended and provided comment. And so what we will be providing as a part of that update is somewhat of a framework of what that would look like. We have already met with Block by Block. We're going to continue to meet with them on a quite regular and frequent basis in terms of just getting the program up and running and getting for as quickly and as efficient and effectively as possible, and making sure that we can provide that information. So I did want to make provide the update and make it clear to the commission that we are providing that on September 19th. And the plan is to return with the Public Safety Commission and maybe either add that item under items from staff so that you would have a copy of that update and report for your October Public Safety Commission meeting. But that is something that we're working on. So the other update that I wanted to provide is regarding the crime statistical data that is provided to the commission on a monthly basis. Lieutenant Lapkin did make mention during her update that we are working collaboratively to kind of take a look at how we could be presenting that information differently, in showing and identifying trends, and looking at not just the month-to-month comparison, but taking it from whether it's a calendar year perspective, whether it's a fiscal year perspective, so that you can see the increase, decrease on a line graph, and it be easy to follow, right, and identifying what exactly is what we're seeing, what they're seeing, what members of the public could identify as well when they're looking at that. We're also looking at the Part 2 crime reports, so similar to what's being reported for the Part 1 crime data. We're trying to look at also providing the same level of information in terms of west of the city, center of the city, east of the city as well, and kind of diving in a little deeper in terms of being a little more detailed on some of the questions that I know have been asked in terms of, well, what exactly is this category of maybe, for instance, other misdemeanors or other felony offenses? So providing some examples on exactly what that is, and then having that data, again, reported in the same fashion. Similarly, we're also going to be looking at block by blocks data and making sure that their reporting districts are being consistent with what we're seeing for the sheriff's department, so that we'll see, again, just some consistency. It does take time in terms of meeting with folks, kind of providing some examples, some drafts, coming up with a template that's going to work best for the commission, for the rest of the community, and just know that this is going to be a living and breathing document. Whatever we're going to propose in September, we're going to be soliciting input and feedback from you all, and making sure that we can continue to make revisions and making some adjustments, and we'll continue to make those amendments and revisions in the future. And we know that there's going to be trends, there's going to be things that are going to come up, like the pickpocketing that's emerged and is a critical issue. And so whatever we can do to kind of report on those aspects, keep those trends and highlight it in the best way possible is our ultimate goal as it relates to that. And then finally, the last update that I wanted to share was really our bylaws for the Public Safety Commission itself. I did ask our city clerk to share the document on the screen. I don't know if you guys could see it yet. I know I see it in front of my screen, so I don't know if the rest of the commission.
There it is.
There it is. And so I highlighted some key areas. Again, this could be a discussion that if we wanted to wait until the full body of the commission, or if you wanted to run through it briefly right now, I'm more than happy to do that. There's only a couple of sections for consideration that we wanted to bring before the commission. So, Chair, the rest of the commission, is that something that you'd want to go through briefly this evening?
I think let's go through it briefly, yes. Yeah. Thank you, Director Rivas.
Great, great, great. So the first section in the public safety bylaws is our regular meetings. You've noticed that I've had some questions regarding, hey, why are we titling the Public Safety Commission a special meeting? But one of the reasons for that is, if you could see what's highlighted there, is because in our bylaws, it reflects that the start time for the meetings is 6:30. But we've been starting at 6 p.m., right? And mainly because of the pandemic, the teleconferencing, et cetera. So if it is the will of the commission, this is something that I'd like to propose to the commission, is if changing it to 6 p.m. permanently, as opposed to 6:30 is something that is a viable option, then that can certainly be a change that we could make to this section. One of the other items in this specific section that needs to be updated that hasn't yet, and I forgot to highlight, and I can see it, if you go back up real quick, Melissa, thank you so much, is the regular meetings location. So right now it says Plummer Park. That has changed, and that has already changed the council. That is something that we're already going to have to change in this section in terms of making sure that it reflects the West Hollywood City Council chambers, right? But again, if the 6 p.m. start time is something that we want to do permanently, then that is something that I'm bringing to the commission to ask direction on. Do we want to pause, or do you want me to continue? Do we want to just chat about this briefly, or do you want me to move on through the rest of the sections?
Director Rivas, how many items did you have that you wanted to go through?
There's 3 additional, I believe, aside from this.
Why don't we just go through them, and then we can go back and discuss?
Sure, absolutely. So if we can scroll down, and I don't know them off the top of my head, so there we go. Order of business. So this is certainly been something that I have reviewed and evaluated, kind of looking at our current agenda that we have in place and that has been in place with the Public Safety Commission. But some of the items, as you can certainly see on our agenda this evening, we have adjournment request that has been added at some point in the Public Safety Commission. That is not something that's reflected here on the bylaws, but can certainly be something that we can consider adding if that is the will of the commission. We have approval of the agenda. That's very standard. Approval of the minutes, public comment, consent calendar, public hearing. So item number 7 that's listed there. The Public Safety Commission does not have public hearings. So that is something that we would be removing. That is more involved for your planning commission, for your business license commission, where they have to, by law, have public hearings, right, notice those items, et cetera, et cetera. And so because there is no requirement for public safety to have a public hearing item, then that is something that we would be removing. One of the items that I see that's currently on the agenda now and has been for quite some time is commissioner comments. And what we ended up doing this evening, right, is we moved up the monthly reports, sheriff, fire, block by block, and we placed those ahead of item 8 on our current agenda, right? But as you can see in the bylaws, there is not a commissioner comment section early on after public comments. What is listed is what you'll see in item 13, which is items for commissioners. So what we're seeing is a little bit of the inconsistency of what's in the bylaws versus what's been on the agenda. So on the agenda now, you have 2 different sections that provide for commissioner comments. On the bylaws, there's only 1 section that provides that. So we can certainly, bring that to you and the rest of the commission in terms of establishing where exactly on the agenda you would like commissioner comments, if it's in the same location that we currently have, and if there's a need to have it again later on in the agenda, or by removing that, we would be consistent with what's in the bylaws and just moving it up in order, if that makes sense. And I believe
And if I may interject too, so we're also looking, and this is not just for public safety, it's an overview of all the bylaws. Typically, unfinished business is heard before new business, so that's something else we'd be looking at. And for consistency, most of the commissions and advisory boards have 1 comment period for advisory board members or commissioners rather than 2. So just something to think about, but this would be an overall item with other updates to other commission and board bylaws to the city council for their approval.
Thank you, Melissa. And if we can scroll down, so that is, those are the changes being proposed for that section there. Public comment. I know there have been instances where we've looked at if we have a number of public speakers, and obviously the chair does have the ability to provide additional time and or a lesser amount of time. So if we want to continue to maintain the 3-minute period to speak for community members, you can certainly maintain that. If you wanted to consider lessening that to 2 minutes, again, that's the will of the commission, but that is something that has also been asked of the commission at some point. So again, it's not something that need to change or make any sort of revisions on, but I just wanted to highlight that for the commission. And then I believe there's one final section in section 7. We talked about public hearing. I think it's a little further on down. Adjournment of meetings. So we certainly wouldn't change in terms of where that's located on the agenda. However, one of the things that I wanted to bring to the commission's attention is currently, as it stands in the bylaws, is that commission meetings shall adjourn not later than 10:30 p.m. And so I know there's certainly been instances where meetings have gone later than 10:30 p.m. You certainly have that capability. It is written in the bylaws now where if the commission by majority vote votes to extend the meeting beyond 10 p.m. in order to complete more of its agenda, you can certainly do that. But given the fact that if we do consider to move the meeting up earlier to 6 p.m., it would make sense to consider moving the 10:30 to 10 p.m. as well. So hopefully that makes sense, but that's something also that I wanted to bring to the commission's attention. And if we happen to have a meeting that is running a little later, currently right now, it's 10:30. Doing a check-in at that time, I think, is important. That's something as I was kind of reviewing some of the commission meetings, I didn't see maybe that check-in occur. I know that it gets pretty late for everybody at that hour. And so making sure that we're doing that consistently, I think, is important. And then again, it's the will of the commission. If the majority vote wishes to continue with the meeting, we can continue. If not, then we can pause at that point, finish off whatever items on the agenda at that time, and then you can reschedule and add the other items that haven't been heard right to the next agenda. So that is all of the changes, Chair and Commission, that are being proposed at this point for open for discussion, and we can certainly have that discussion again occur next month's meeting as well.
We have 5 commissioners here. Should we start a very light discussion on this? I don't want this to get into an all-night back and forth, but at least have each commissioner give opinions on certain things, especially, I believe Director Rivas, our start time at 6 p.m., correct? And, if we start at 6 p.m., unless we have urgent business, this should not be a reason why we're not done by 10 p.m. We don't need to be here any longer than that.
Correct. So 6 p.m. is what's being proposed. It's what's in place now and what we have been operating. Again, primarily due to the pandemic, a lot of commissions, also the liaison for the Business License Commission, I can tell you we ultimately have been doing the same thing as well. But now that we're meeting in person, is that something that we want to potentially permanently change? And if we need to do that, then we can incorporate that and propose changes.
I personally, I think that it was unanimous, the 6 p.m., but I'm kind of curious what the public would it make a difference to them, how and their participation with us. I wonder, was this written on as an item in our agenda that they could weigh in on this sort of thing? Or I don't know if it matters.
Well, if I'm correct, city council meetings start at 6 p.m., correct?
They do. The municipal code says we start at 6:30, but again, because of the pandemic, we've started earlier. It used to be 5:30 and then I moved to 6. But this is a conversation we're having overall because a lot of the commission and advisory boards started meeting earlier during the pandemic. And so is it working for everybody? And if so, let's make it a permanent change so we don't have to keep calling it a special meeting or really a regular adjourned meeting. I think if it works best for the group, we've had a lot of participation, my understanding, with the commission, so the public's ability to participate doesn't seem to be affected. But I think we can have this general discussion tonight because the item really isn't agendized. And then Danny would bring back a more formal item outlining all of the commission or the proposed recommendation so that it is on an agenda for the public to make comment on.
Okay, Commissioner Sunshine.
I'm wondering if what's on the table is for us to make a motion to accept or reject all of these changes?
No, because there's no item on the agenda.
Okay, so I personally don't have any problems with any of the suggestions, and I'm wondering if anyone else here does. Otherwise, maybe we can move on.
I don't either.
I agree 100%. I don't think we need to get into a lengthy debate over any of this.
Great. So then what I'm hearing from the commission, I'll certainly put it on the agenda for next commission meeting. And then that way, there can be a motion made in terms of making a decision on any of those.
Will those kind of be in one motion, all the changes that you discussed? And so it'd be the adoption of the new, okay.
Yeah, I'll make sure and itemize them in a brief staff report.
And that'll also include moving our staff or our agency reports forward to top of meeting, correct?
You know what? That also could be definitely something. And I'm looking at City Clerk Crowder just to make sure too, if we wanted to ultimately propose changing the order, right, of items, we could do that at that point as well.
Yes.
So yes, Chair.
Thank you. Anything else before we move on? I believe we're at public comments. Staff, do we have any public comments?
Yes, we have 2 public speakers. The first speaker is Alicia Duran.
I pull this up right here. Can you guys hear me? Hi, I'm Alessia. I just had 2 comments. The first one was for the moment when the fire department came to speak. I noticed that he said most of the fires are happening due to rubbish instead of the apartment complex ones, which I do believe is important to also do the whole smoke detector checkups. But also, I was thinking that if the main problem is the rubbish one, which is, as they said, not clearly in correlation to homelessness and housing, I would believe it'd be more efficient to focus on that root of the problem, which would be housing. Then another comment I wanted to make was whenever I believe Todd Hallman spoke about the problem with an app or the making of an app that lets locals know about whether there's safety concerns. I wanted to comment that there's already an app in placement called the Citizens app, which is it's one of the largest ones in place right now. I believe it'd be more efficient if it's already in place to, instead of creating a new one, to promote one that's already efficient. And yeah, those are just the 2 comments I wanted to make. Thank you, guys.
Staff, and do we have another speaker?
Yes, next we have Annie Jump Vicente.
Yes, if you see all these signs are in absolutely poor condition. I believe that this is related to public safety, no? These signs are the ones that specifically 2 locations. I fucking hate podiums. 2 locations, right in front of the Trader Joe's near Fuller, over by La Brea, and then over by Formosa, Poinsettia Place. All these are from there in about a month and a half to 2 months. As you could see, drivers do not give a shit about notifications, about all these bright-ass signs. They avoid the blinking lights. They avoid the triangles in the road. Hey, most people don't even know what the triangles in the road even mean. Isn't that fucking something? There needs to be a significant public forum about how we are going, like you addressed, how we're going to inform the community about public safety. But more importantly, I wanted to speak about the safety of people does not lie with the sheriffs. It does not. It relies with you guys, and I'm very glad that you're all here. Thank you. We need to rely on our city planners with a clipboard. They are much more efficient than those assholes back there. That money can go directly.
Language, please.
Thank you. That money can definitely go to fund more people, more public safety. Sheriffs don't, I believe sheriffs don't try to house people. Oh, wait, they do. It's called a jail cell. So they don't provide mental services. They don't provide food. They don't provide housing. They don't provide water. What good are they to the people that need the help the most? If you want to end homelessness, fill the empty units in our city with people who are homeless. It's actually not that difficult. There are cities around the world that have done it. There are countries around the world that have done it extremely easily. Why is West Hollywood and the city of LA and LA County so plagued with homelessness? I'll tell you why. Because we call them transients. People who move around freely? I don't think so. Again, these people are our neighbors. They need help. Take away car lanes because clearly people abuse that power. So bring it to public spaces. Take away a lane, you get more space. You can build housing in between the empty spaces. May I please have one more minute?
I believe we're good. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Items from the commissioners. Commissioner comments.
I mean, aren't those property of the city?
Yes, they
Aren't
are.
we just
That is city
seeing
property.
something happen here that's illegal?
Yes.
Commissioners, additional comments.
I mean, aren't somebody going to do something? That's illegal, isn't it? I mean, you just let that go? That's illegal. This person had illegal, that's the property of the city, right?
Well, I think, I could be wrong, but I think that's the sheriff's decision. Director Rivas?
Yeah, we'll take a look and address that situation.
Commissioners, any other comments?
I appreciate all you guys coming and everybody that's participating, and reach out to us so that we can come and hear your concerns and help you.
All right, I just have one last comment. This is our second meeting in chambers. There was a 2-year hiatus. This is my second meeting as chair. My goal is to run the most effective meetings that I can to keep this train on the track. We do not need to be sitting here at midnight. There's no need for that. So thank you to the public for your indulgence. We're still working out the kinks. I'm still learning how to work the system. Apologies again to Commissioner Sonjion. I seem to always skip her, but I have to remember to look to the left. But again, this is new for all of us. So thank you to my fellow commissioners. And with that, we are adjourned.